In our previous session, we have talked about the eightfold path of the Buddhism, and we have discussed about that is the how the different path that can help to develop a wisdom with the help of even meditation. Now, I will take in this session the application of this Buddhist approach to the MSID. In the management through the Buddhist lens, I will talk about the managerial functions through the corporate team building, leadership, personal development, interpersonal relations, employee-employer relationships, stress management and anger management. Now, here when we are talking about the corporate team building, whoever offers sacrifice or the whoever gets the others to do so, all those are following a course of merit benefiting many others. Now, here we have to understand that whenever we are talking about the team building, we are talking about the different personalities, and different personalities, the way they behave with their strengths and their weaknesses. So, if they have to work together, how they can work together? People can learn to work together, and that is good for results. Buddhism has 2600 years experience creating structured team environments. And where we are working? We are working into the global environment, and in this global environment we have to work adapted to the local culture, but in the management you are competing globally. So, this local culture and competing globally, that has to be understood and likely to be implemented in a managerial aspects. Here the Buddhist term for these communities is the Sarigraha. So, in Sarigraha basically we talk about that is the how you can retain your local culture. Now, when we talk about in the current context the competitiveness, global competitiveness, and when you want to retain the Indian culture, we will find that many corporates, they are coming with the practices which are followed and taken from the Indian ancient culture. Then Indian ancient culture talks about that is if you want to run a kingdom, a business, then in that case you need every type of the personalities. Personalities, those who are loyal, personalities, those who have high potential, personalities which are speedy, and also personalities which are clever and cunning. And therefore, in that case, if you are going by this particular aspect, that is the how you are creating a corporate team building, then as per the Buddhism we have to take into consideration the local culture. For example, in your team there are the employees, team members from the USA, Europe, Asia, Africa. Now, the working style and the emotional states, that will be totally different, because they will be representing their own culture. Now, when a leader has to get work done from these employees of his team members, then in that case he should not forget the local culture, and that is why nowadays we talk about that is the global culture. The local culture means global practices in the local culture, and even if you are working with the different communities, please be sure that is you are able to get work done from these different personalities working into that particular team building, and respect and honor the local culture of those employees, and you will find that is the you are able to create, that is the how you will be getting work done by respecting their local culture. The next factor which is having the application of the leadership. Now, Buddha had a very strong purpose to find that an end to suffering, not just by himself but for everyone, and it is a vision, and vision articulation that requires a lot of understanding, because you are directing your force, your all manpower towards that achievement of your vision and goal. So, your vision are directing the actions, and therefore, in that case the leader's vision influence the behavior of others. And if we talk about the Buddhism, then he gave up everything including the life of the king and the family in order to find enlightenment. Now, you see, here is another concept I would like to connect with this, and that is the work life enrichment. In work life enrichment, when you are going to include the life of the king and the family, so the king has to balance, and then he cannot say that no, I am taking the care of the nation, so I will not be able to take care of my family. Family is ignored. In today's context, what I want to say, that is, when you are having the high stress and pressure at the workplace, and there is a because of high competitiveness there is a demand, and then in that case you have to perform. But dear friends, that cannot be excuse to not to take the care of family. To take the care of family, the leader should learn that how he is able to balance between the work life enrichment. And therefore, this vision was the pillar of his life's work, and created a following that is still strong today, and it becomes very important, that is the we are working on these both the pillars, and on both the pillars we are effectively managing, as a result of which we are finding that is there is an end to suffering. In personal development, if a man should conquer in a battle 1,000 more, and another should conquer himself, his would be the greater victory, because the greatest victory is the victory over oneself. A very simple say, you can hide from others yourself, but you cannot hide yourself from yourself. And therefore, in that case it is becoming very important that only a man himself can be the master of himself. Who else outside could be his master? The mind, the way the mind is working, the brain is working, and in this mind and brain, when the person is working, then it becomes very much important, that is the how he trains his brain, how he works. And then in that case, when he is working with the fighting emotionally with the world, fighting with the struggles, and therefore in that case he is conquering. But what is required? He has to conquer himself first. Simple example of the greed, as it has been mentioned, that is the definition of desire which lead to the greed. How long and what measurement parameters you use to satisfy your desire. So, the definition of desire by the oneself, that he has to be he has to articulate with the wisdom, and if he is able to articulate with the wisdom, he will be able to control himself, and when he is controlling himself, it is his victory, and when one is having the victory of himself, there is nothing like that. But it is very easy to say, but very difficult to implement, because when we are talking about the personal development, in the case of the personal development, the environment plays a very important role, and in that environment it comes the family, friends, society, and what a person learns and understands, that will be continue for long. It is not his own wisdom, it is his wisdom influenced by the family, the head of the family called Karta, and also by the friends surrounding to him. And not only this, when he goes to the school or in the society, the people from the society, they influence his thought process, where he has to define what is a victory, what is an achievement, who is a winner and who is a loser. In the personality development, it becomes very, very important how you define yourself as a winner. When you will say that you are a winner to yourself, otherwise a feeling of the loser for the oneself if continues, then there cannot be the peace of mind. And therefore, in that case the purpose will be defeated, and we will not say it is about this path. In interpersonal relationships, there are 4 phases of compassion. As I mentioned, there is a compassion. In earlier session we have talked about the compassion. Compassion, that is a concern for others with the feelings. It is not only the empathy, it is more than empathy. What is that? Charity, kindness, speech, doing the good and treating all alike. So, therefore, if you follow the Buddhist path and then manage the interpersonal relationship, then in that case if one should have the heart is full of charity, heart is full of the kind speech. So, whatever he speaks, the person's the speech is always used as a medicine to others, relaxing the pain, the sufferings of the others. So, his speech is very kind speech is there. Whenever he speaks very kindly, and therefore, the people wants to listen. Doing the good, good for whom? Not for oneself, good for others, and treating all alike. So, whatever is going on, in spite of the favorable conditions or unfavorable conditions, he is treating the all alike. People are supporting or people are opposing, no problem, he is doing for all. It can be easy to think Buddhist practice is individualistic and solitary, but much more part of the practice is interpersonal. It is not individualistic. It concerns the rich world of our relationships with others. In fact, the interpersonal teachings and practices of Buddhism create the context and the foundation for the inner personal practices such as meditation, as I have discussed in my last session. So, therefore, whenever we are talking about the interpersonal teachings and practices, it is becoming of the Buddhism. So, definitely that is creating the inner personal practices. So, when there is a strong interpersonal practices are there, then only the person will be conquering oneself, and that is one of the mechanism as I discussed in the last session, and here also it is talked about the meditation. The practice of living by the precepts, one aspect of Sila is about the interpersonal relationships. It is the practice of training to develop caring. This is very, very important, that whenever we are talking about the developing a personality and that is full of compassion, the first and foremost comes, that is the caring. Unless and until the person does not have any attitude towards the caring of others, there cannot be any compassion. The caring itself shows, that is how much is the concern the person is. Compassionate relationship with others rather than the harmful ones. At workplace, what type of relationship do you develop? Are you smart? How do you define smartness? And if they define the smartness that I slow down somebody and I go ahead and that is my smartness, so it is a misperception. The right perception is compassionate relationship with others rather than the harmful ones. If you feel pride by saying, that is, I did somebody like this, I fought with somebody, and then I have come on, forward, and then I have progressed, and for many people I have left behind. No, it is not compassionate feeling, and therefore in the compassionate relationship with others is the more preference as compared to harmful ones. So, do not harm others at workplace. According to Buddhism, the generous ones rather than greedy ones, be the generous one. Okay, what is my portion? I have taken. What is your portion? You are supposed to take. That piece of cake is for you, it is not for me. I should not try to take the whole cake, because everyone in the room is having the share on that particular cake. So, therefore, one has to be very generous rather than the greedy ones, honest ones rather than the dishonest ones. Please understand, in the long term success, these particular concepts that will help to grow, and therefore, always develop the caring attitude, be compassionate, do not be harmful to others, generous one rather than the greedy ones, and the honest one rather than the dishonest ones. When we talk about the employee-employee relationship, the Buddha gave considerable attention to this issue in his advice to Sigalaka as recorded in Sigalaka Sutta. In the section of the disclosure devoted on the employer-employee relationships, the Buddha enumerates 5 duties of the employer towards the employee and 5 duties of the employee towards the employer. And therefore, these 5 duties of the employer are: employer must give the work according to his employee bodily and mentally strength. We talk a lot in management about the delegation and decentralization, but we have to be very careful while delegating and decentralizing. I am sure that is the employer takes care of the mental strength of the individual, but does he takes care of the bodily health also? Or that bodily health is his personal problem. If he is having the sugar, diabetes, if he is having the blood pressure, he is having the heart problem. But while decentralizing, it is not considered, body is not considered, only the mental is considered, and giving the more and more assignments. And then that is not as per the Buddhism. As per the Buddhism, employer must give the work according to the employee's bodily and mental strength. The employer must give the employee sufficient food and the pay which will be sufficient in terms of enabling a happy human life. So, it is not the government which talks about the minimum wages act. Employer also has to ensure from oneself, that is, whatever he is giving to the employee, that is enough to run his life. One should not feel the short for the fulfillment of his basic needs, and which will be sufficient in terms of enabling a happy human life. One should be happy. So, if somebody is servant to you, you have to ensure as a master, that is whatever I am giving to him against my services, and that is enough for him for the happy human life. The employer should provide the employee with medical benefits and support after retirement. This payment of gratuity act and all, it is not only for while working, this is for, that is the after work, because he has spent his life with you. So, whatever has been time, body and mind has been spent to serve the master by the servant, then it is a responsibility of the employer, that is the after retirement, after the services are over, the medical benefit and support is also should be continued, and that was the role of the government. The employer should share any extra profit he makes and the example bonus. So, that payment of bonus act 1965, it is what? That is the share any extra profit from the available surplus, and to grant the employee holidays and special allowances, the terms and conditions of employment basically. So, it is the employer's duty to create the happiness for his employees by taking care of the terms and conditions of employment. But against this, the employee should also have performed the duties. The employee should be punctual, the employee should finish work after the employer. You should try to become free from whole clock watching mentality. If I am working from 9 to 5, so at the 5 o'clock I should end, that mentality is not required. The employee should be sincere and trustworthy. Employee should perform his or her duties to the satisfaction of the employer. Like nowadays you talk about the customer satisfaction, but it is not the only satisfaction, customer should be delighted. The happiness index of the customer is related to the delightness. Similarly, here also the employee should perform the duties to the satisfaction of the employer. Employee should speak in praise of his employer, do not criticize. The Buddha must have been aware of how readily workers abuse the boss beyond his back then and now. Even Buddha was knowing, that is how these employees, they must be at the back of the boss, must be criticizing. They may be dutiful and respectful during working hours, but what you hear outside the company gates can tell a different story. So, therefore, in that case, many times the people outside of the workplace, they criticize their employer. In the stress management, excess tension, anger in workplace creates problem for each person and for the entire company, and there are certain things we can do about it. The first beneficial effect of meditation is relaxation. As I mentioned in the stress management, that is the meditation is the best source of the relaxation. And the second is awareness of the sources of stress, why the stress is there, and stress is normally because of the desire. Control your desire, allowing diagnosis and effective response. So, there is a demand, there is a supply. So, if you have the proper demand supply relationship, then definitely in that case there will be no stress. So, keep aware yourself, do not raise your demands, because if you raise your demands to supply, you have to yourself has to work. Keep reasonable demands, because we know in the relationship of the stress and performance is inverted U relationship. Earlier session I have already talked about the stress management, and during the stress management we have talked about that is how to be the effective responses. Before we come to the final slide, I would like to talk about the anger management. Anger management we have talked in the separate session also separately, but here I would like to mention that is whenever we are talking about all these aspects of the corporate team building, leadership, personal development, interpersonal relations, employee relationship, stress management, and finally anger management, because anger management we have taken a separate session, complete session itself. So, in anger management please be the wise person, use your wisdom, and do not be non-compensate person. The anger, when you have anger, your speech, your words should not harm to others. Rather than anger should be constructive, it is positive, it is building the solutions and not creating the more problems. That is anger management. The anger is used against the enemy, not against the friends. The anger is used as a weapon to kill the poverty. Anger is converted into aggressiveness to take the society ahead and ahead. So, dear friends, what I would like to say, that is the Buddhism's eightfold path. It gives us direction in how to maintain the interpersonal relationship, how to control ourselves, how to win over oneself. The stress and anger is nothing like, but it is a technique. Stress management and anger management are the path shown by the Buddhism to that win over yourself, not over the others. First win yourself and then you try to over the others. So, management is, that is the, on the basis of this eightfold path we understand, that is these practices, and with the meditation definitely when we apply the Buddhism at the workplace and as a manager, I am sure that by understanding this we will be able to manage a strong harmony at the workplace and good interpersonal relationship and building a team. Team effectiveness also I have talked in this particular session through Buddhism. So, this is all about the management through the Buddhist lens. I will end my session here. Thank you.